Welcome back to the next episode of the Hideaway podcast. My name is Win, and I am joined here by Andy. Andy, say something.
What's up?
And JP Fry.
How's your day going?
For those of you who are new here to the Hideaway, our goal is to discuss a few topics each week in a level-headed and open way. Sort of a hideaway from the chaotic rhetoric of today, hence the name. For the first half, we are each going to be picking an innovation in our lifetime and discuss how it impacted our lives and influenced the future. Let's start off with JP. JP, what do you got for us?
All right. What I got is Tesla in general, and not their, they do great things for the city of LA. Elon wants to build all that stuff, but I like their vehicles, which they build to showcase their products. I know Winfield wants one.
Yes.
I want one as well. But with the Model 3, because their first two models were very expensive. Like, you're talking $100,000, and the average person really cannot afford a $100,000 car. And it was great to showcase it, but it didn't really have much of an impact until they released the Tesla Model 3, which started production in July 2017, and it costs anywhere from, I think it's like $35,000 to $40,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that's before the rebate that it's like the $7,500 rebate that you can actually get money for buying this electric car. I really think it's influencing the future in the way that, because gas, we're running out of that. But if we can generate electricity through renewables, then these cars, they can run forever, which I think is really something that we should be looking forward to in the future.
And you're kind of like a car junkie.
One could say that, yeah.
He's definitely a car junkie.
I love my gasoline-powered cars. They're fun. I like 15 gears. I like, filling it up with 93 octane, which gets you more horsepower and better gas mileage than just 91 octane or 87, which is what most people are on. I like adding more power. I like, customizing the look of it, lowering it. I like all sorts of cars. I mean, my favorite cars, Porsches, but the Tesla Model 3. I really want to own one day because they're actually ridiculously fast still. And I like going fast. And not just because there's Priuses, but, they're not fun to drive. Yeah. I've driven one before. They're really quite awful. I hate them.
And I've had friends who are car junkies. And what they say about the Tesla is it's a fast car, but there's no engine anymore. Or
well, there is. There's a motor. It's still a car. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't make that engine noise, and you don't get the oil changes and all that kind of
classic car stuff you would associate with a car.
It's not people say it's not a real car. I've heard, because it's not an engine, and it's kind of like that elitism, the car elitism, where it's unless you're driving automatic. Now it's if you're driving a gas powered car
that has gears.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
I don't know. Yeah. It's just going forward with these things. When Tesla, they're working on a truck right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Cybertruck.
And many of you probably don't know this, but one thing that's really important when using a truck is you're going to be towing things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to tow things, you need a lot of torque. And guess what electric motors produce more of than any other motor on the planet? Torque.
Ton of torque.
It's going to work really well for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually hope to see some, construction dudes hauling their stuff with Tesla trucks. That'd be so neat.
Maybe.
That'll be cool.
They also want to put solar panels on the back of the trucks, so it automatically recharges while not even having to do anything. That would be wild.
Yeah, and with it now, from what I understand of the efficiency of solar panels, it's not going to be a full charge when you go off to do something, but it's definitely going to extend your range, which is super cool and super smart. It's an amazing use of space.
I pose a question for JP. All right,
I don't like where this is going.
You say you really want to own one, right? And so right now you see some Teslas around, but I wouldn't say you see a large amount of them.
I'm
even
surprised,
electric cars in general.
Where you live.
I'm just saying. So the Model 3s are going to be relatively cheaper. You're going to see more people having them. Do you think that you might change your mind owning one, seeing now like the mass population, a potential like more population of people owning one, like that rarity effect?
It's not even the rarity effect that I like. It's just that I can go plug it in at home every day. I don't have to worry about getting gas. With the performance model, it can go to 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. Like, that's almost supercar level of speed for a like $40,000 car, which you can't find anywhere. I really like the interiors. It's very minimalist and not that distracting. And Elon provides free software updates like over the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like, to me, I've been following Tesla since 2013 when they were first like kind of making waves with their Model S. And just the level of support for the Model S's that they've had over the years, and just the constant updating, and like there's even like settings in the software that they have now that are named after users who suggest a setting. Like,
that's cool.
I think there's like a Jeff mode or something, and it was because Tesla has very loud notifications, and that's just so that they keep you like safe. But he found that his kids were sleeping in the back, and I think this is what it is.
They get woken up by the notification. They get waken up.
Yeah, so they have a Jeff mode where it turns down. It makes sure.
That's so neat.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
It's stuff like that. That's like the cool thing where it's like they're actively looking at user input and feedback, and you're seeing an improvement. It's not a static car anymore. If I wanted to go and update the software on my dad's Mazda or whatever, I would have to go to the car dealership and pay about $300 for a marginal update that may give you maybe better GPS. Like, it's kind of crazy how outdated all of the other manufacturers seem in comparison to Tesla and just their practices. Yeah, sure, Tesla isn't always doing the best thing. Like, they've had issues with worker safety in the past, and they're still kind of dealing with quality assurance and all that kind of
quality stuff. Sometimes, like the panel gaps you see on some of the like first production Model 3s, it's just brutal.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like,
shady. That means like essentially like here's one panel of the metal and here's another, and they're supposed to be like this close. But on some Teslas, they like screwed up the production.
Yeah,
and they're,
I've
like
seen
that
photos
far away.
Yeah, I remember that.
And like, yeah, that's not a great thing to happen.
But it's almost expected when they're not a car manufacturer.
Yeah,
like this is literally just to test their products. It's not supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to be anything insane, but it kind of took off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was originally just meant to kind of like the whole idea of Tesla itself isn't to make money, which is why I didn't really understand why they went public with it. But the goal is to like the original goal, and still the goal now, is to push electric cars into the mainstream. And that's why none of what they make is patented. They purposely do not patent anything that they make. And at the end of the day, they're trying to sell the idea and the software, not the, like you said, not the car,
not the actual car. Like,
yeah, they don't. That's not their point.
That's the spoon. That's the spoon for the food.
Yeah,
but people have really started to like the spoon.
Yeah, and I think it's cool what they keep doing after they're pushing the envelope each time they come up with something. Like the original Roadster was insane, and they worked with Lotus, was it? Or
yeah, I think you're right with that.
Yeah, and that was like their first be like, hey, electric cars are cool, and then they made the Model S, and the Model S was. If you haven't ridden in a Model S, I got a chance to ride in one probably 5 years ago now. It's
Nice.
one of the coolest cars I've ever been in.
Did you do one in a Tesla store?
I went on a test ride for it.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
so did I
Yeah,
back in Palo Alto. They are insane.
Yeah, they're like, my dad refuses to do a test ride for him because
Really?
he says the moment he sits in the front seat, he's gonna want to buy one, and he can't do that to himself. So, so he's refused. He's ridden in Teslas. He really enjoys them, but he refuses to get into the driver's seat. Like, I've also been in a Model X. The Model X is that's an experience in its own right. That's for you guys
The
who
golf
don't
wing
know.
doors.
The gull-wing doors. It's a crossover SUV. It's super expensive, but the gull-wing doors are cool and all.
Yeah.
But what's even cooler is the glass for the front windshield goes all the way up and over your head. So you feel like you're in a helicopter cockpit rather than in a car. And like, you can look up and there's glass. And it's it's like this weird, surreal experience. It's also insanely fast, even for like, especially for a crossover. But like, it's beating a lot of sports cars, which is just insane.
It's beating more than sports cars.
Yeah.
They are so fast.
It's so
It's unbelievable.
They're arguably my favorite company in the world at the moment. I think they're doing the best work. Yeah, that's actually a good spot to move over to Andy. Andy, we're gonna
Oh, it's
ask
my
you,
turn.
Yeah, we're gonna
All
look
right.
at your innovation.
All right. So keeping on the Elon Musk category, this was not planned. Or the company I chose was definitely SpaceX. So both Win and I have had long discussions about space travel and humans in space and stuff like that throughout the years. And what's cool to me about SpaceX is that we are now commercializing space travel. So like, gone are the days where like NASA or like the Americans or even the Russians are going to space, performing operations in space, and then coming back down to Earth. It's a company doing it, which brings a wide breadth of opportunities for people around the world to hopefully then at some point experience space travel, or even at some point go to the International Space Station, go to the moon, and even shoot farther than that. So I always thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and the innovation coming out of that too is just like insane.
Oh, absolutely.
The retrieval mechanisms.
Yes,
for
the
their,
reusing of rockets. Like,
That's
if you
cool.
told me that like 5-10 years ago, I would have been like, that's not possible, because NASA, every time they launched a space shuttle, would always have to just burn the rockets when they were coming back down, and it is insanely expensive to rebuild those. Part of the reason why they shut down the space shuttle program back in like 2010, 2011 or something like that. But SpaceX developed a way that you can now navigate with leftover fuel and the literal rocket that jettisons off the capsule, and they can land it in the middle of the ocean on a pad, like on a dime.
Have they really?
They can. It
Yeah.
is,
Oh
if you
my
not,
God.
it is unbelievable to watch. And they can actually, the cool thing, when Phil, have you seen them do the double landing?
Yes,
Where they land two of
that's
them, like right
amazing.
next to each other.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
It's
insane.
it's insanely cool. And then they park them in the middle of the ocean, they go out, retrieve them, they can reuse them again.
Yeah,
So it is so cool.
it's super like weird. Like
Yeah.
Elon Musk put it. I know the exact quote. I just heard him say this from a clip a couple of weeks ago, and it was like, he was talking to some guy who was like, "Why do you want to catch the rockets again?" And like, he goes, "Well, if we sent 600 million to $1 billion up into space and it was floating down back from space, you'd probably want to catch that." Like, and it just makes so
Yeah,
much sense.
it makes
that
a
way.
lot of sense.
It's like,
It's so cool.
it's like, why did
Do you
anybody
think that
think
was
of that?
NASA? Do you think that was NASA being lazy, or just they couldn't
I think
figure out how
part
to
of
do
it
it?
is definitely the
So hard.
time.
Yeah.
Elon,
Were they stuck in the ways of like
well, SpaceX
the
is privately
70s?
funded. It's funded, and
Yeah.
NASA at the point didn't have that much funding.
NASA still doesn't have funding, which is like
But
awful.
they're kind of more in like, NASA works with SpaceX pretty closely now. Like, all the facilities that SpaceX is launching in Florida are all old NASA facilities that they gave over to them.
Mhm.
So, and I think in a couple of days they're going to launch humans into space to go to the space station, and those
Yeah.
astronauts are NASA astronauts. So,
Mhm. Yeah, that'll be the first launch.
with humans, I
Yeah,
believe, from SpaceX.
Yeah, from SpaceX, but also on American soil
Yeah,
since
since the last space shuttle launch.
this last space.
It's been a while, yeah.
And going back to your point, your question of like what if you thought it was laziness from NASA? I think NASA isn't a lazy company or lazy organization. They just get like $22 billion a year. That's all they get, and like that sounds like a ton.
And
But when you're
most of that
talking-
But
money,
not
though,
for going to space.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
come on.
well, that's part of it. I once read something that said for every pound you take to space, it's about $1 million you lose, and a lot of their money, their budget got cut recently, and a lot of that money that like they get just goes directly into maintaining current projects they have going. So like maintaining the International Space Station every year, doing repairs, buying parts for other satellites and stuff that they're building.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of like sunk costs with that.
Yeah, and like the Curiosity rover, I think costed $2 billion alone.
Yeah.
And
I don't know what this new one's costing though, but I think this new one's costed more. It's bigger.
oh yeah, it's gonna definitely gonna be bigger. Like, and
So
to put it in perspective, the defense budget of the United States is $617 billion. So actually, that's why you see Lockheed Martin and those kind of companies coming out with the innovation instead of NASA. And they're obviously directed more towards defense. But if you're looking at a government-funded innovation, that's where you're seeing it instead of NASA being able to figure out how to catch those rockets again.
Exactly.
But you think if their budget's so small, wouldn't they want to be able to catch that money?
But you can't.
You can't develop that. Like
Yeah.
think about it. Like I encourage Winfield to post a link down in the description of some of the footage of the failed attempts that they had.
Yeah.
I think SpaceX tried for like 2 years
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
to try and land. Oh, they did not land them on the first try.
Yeah,
there
it
were
was
ones where like they just missed the platform. They land on the platform and it tips over. I watched one time that just landed on the platform. And everybody was all happy. It looks fine, and then it just blew up.
Yeah.
So like, there are so many. They tried so many times and they finally perfected it. But
it was great because actually in 2017, right after right as they were starting to really kind of get it close to being nailed down, like their first real synchronized landing was in the January of 2018.
it was pretty early 2018, I think.
But they like SpaceX themselves has a compilation, and I'll put it in the description.
Yeah.
It's how not to land an orbital rocket booster, and it's just them rocket after rocket just
exploding and falling,
and you can't do that as NASA. If you're a government funded organization and you're blowing up things left and right,
it's a waste of taxpayer money and stuff like that. But because it's privately funded and stuff, it's pretty cool. Also, cool thing about the rockets that they land them in the ocean, but like it's like a mile or two away from like the coast of Florida, I think, is where they land them.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So like if they miss, there's all of a sudden like a missile now headed towards Florida.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty dangerous game that they're playing.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool.
Imagine trying to land a dart in a huge dartboard that's like the size of your house in the center of it.
Yeah.
And the red dot is still the same size. Like that is what they're doing, but at like 500 times the speed.
Yeah.
With
a dart is also extremely expensive as well. It's one expensive dart.
Yeah, I say SpaceX is one of the, like, that's also a company that I've been following. Like, I think we all kind of are really big supporters of Elon Musk here. I think he's one of the, like, the most fascinating people of our time in general. He's just a genius, and he's also very funny. If you ever listen to him talk, he handles things very well, and his Twitter account is just hilarious. It's so much fun to watch him do his thing, and I'm really excited to see. I think I'll bet you that SpaceX is the first to land on Mars.
I would agree. I think they're probably
at this rate.
closest.
Yeah, you're definitely right.
Yeah.
Well, you got the NASA program, that's starting.
I think they're going to. I think in the end, it's not happening right now. They're probably going to joint do it.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah.
my guess.
I could see that.
If they can pool resources, I think they could probably get there faster.
Mhm.
And I think that's big for them.
I'd say within the next decade, you're gonna see
Yeah, absolutely.
people on Mars, which is like
Really?
a crazy thing to think about. And
Yeah, that's
like,
pretty cool.
but you're going to see it. The big ship coming out of SpaceX, I forget the name, the Falcon Heavy. Yeah, it's the Falcon Heavy. It's this like stainless steel, futuristic, shiny. It's like actually chrome a little, and it's this giant ship, and that's what's going to be taking things to Mars, and that is closer to done than people realize, and the plans for getting people to Mars are closer to done than people realize, which is really
remember
cool.
remember a couple of years ago they had everybody in the world applicants apply for a one-way trip to Mars.
Yeah, the Mars One mission.
Yeah, I don't know if they cut that or whatever happened to that.
How would they do test runs for that? Or would people just like go on there and be
people
like,
submitted
this-
like video recordings and resumes,
So
and they had people from like all over the
Everywhere.
world who were like test pilots, and people who wanted to go. But then the cool thing was that they also had photographers and artists and writers were also on the list of people to go because they wanted like everything up there to be like described. I remember at one point they whittled it down to 100 people.
Yeah, I'm looking them up right now. And like JP, you asked, how do they figure that out? Like, how do they
test run that? Or do people just risk their lives for it?
It's the same idea as the moon mission, but a little different because you can't easily come back.
Yeah, you can't really.
So you're going to be sending what the nice thing that we have nowadays is that we have the ability to send automated systems towards it and test those automated systems without anyone in them. And that we couldn't do back in the 60s, where we actually had to send people up in orbit.
Yeah.
The moon. You can do that with like there's a delay. There's a 7-minute delay.
7 minutes. 7 minutes.
But you're going to I think what they're going to happen is going to end up happening is they're going to be sending a whole bunch of simulations out that way.
Yeah.
And doing it tests in that respect, where what'll probably happen is they'll send something to fly around, they'll send test lands, and then they'll start sending supplies before people even get there, which is super cool. The whole, I think it was last year, like came out with the habitats, the HABs for Mars. They're super cool. There's actually one that's built in New York.
I was gonna say, did you see the video of the guy that like actually performed out a whole simulation inside of one of those things for a very long time?
Yeah, it's super cool. I'm so I'm so excited for to see this happen. It's gonna be fun to watch this all. We're like, it's super weird to think that like we're kind of in the same space as people were in the early 1960s. But the thing was, everybody was excited about space back then. Only a few people are now, because there's just not any reason to be excited.
We've been to the moon, we've done it all.
Which is the whole thing.
Yeah, I think though when the closer we get, people are going to start getting more and more excited about it.
Yeah, I'm so hyped.
I think it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, Win. What company have you chosen for us today?
All right, so this is going to be a big surprise for all of you. I picked actually the iPhone, and
not surprised at all. Not surprised at all.
I'm not surprised at all.
And I know it's like very cliche to pick the iPhone as an innovation in our lifetime, but I think
it's definitely one we take for granted.
Yeah, it really is. Like it's single-handedly changed how everybody on this planet, nearly everybody on this planet, interacts with each other, gets their information, does almost everything nowadays. If you were to go back 100 years from now, or 100 years ago, and say, hey, do you want this thing that is about the size of a brick, very thin, but you can talk to anyone in the world, and you can get any piece of information just by asking it a few questions. They'd think that you're like some kind of wizard or something.
They wouldn't
they'd
even
be-
believe you.
Yeah, they wouldn't believe you.
You'd be burned at the stake for being a witch.
Like
Probably.
if you showed someone an iPhone and you're like, look at this, they'd be like, what? They'd be so confused. If you go, and I always say 100 years, but even if you go back 20 years, like right when we were born, and show someone
Yeah.
an iPhone, like people would know anything to
Yeah.
do with it.
Absolutely. Society, it just smartphones in general, even society, is just completely changed around how you do that stuff. Like the way I like to think about it, when is like imagine like sitting down at a restaurant or even just outside or something by yourself. Like 20 years ago, people would have brought a book with them or like read the newspaper, stuff like that. Nowadays, like just bring your phone and you could read the newspaper, or you could read a book, or you could do 100 other things that you weren't able to do back then.
Yeah, it's a brave new world almost, like it with, and I think it goes even farther into saying that like the internet wouldn't be anywhere near what it is now without the invention of mobile computing in the way that we have tablets and
You're
phones.
absolutely right with
100% right.
Like YouTube wouldn't have been a big thing as big as it is now. Netflix wouldn't have been as big as it is now. The way we can like just interact with everything in our lives.
Yeah.
wouldn't be
Having
the
this in your hand is easier than having to go access a desktop computer. Because imagine every single time you wanted to go on the internet, you'd have to go to your computer, you'd have to log in.
You
You have to be
open up
at
your
like your
laptop
house or
something like
at
that.
work or somewhere like that.
Everything would
yeah.
have to happen a lot slower. But because everybody has one of these in their hands, everybody can do it at once from anywhere. And I think that that's really pushed
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
forward.
And like the fact that like these cameras on the back of your phone, like I'm really into photography. These cameras on the back of your phone are getting to the point where, to the layman, you cannot find a difference between my very expensive DSLR that I'm recording myself on right now and an iPhone camera that you get with your phone already.
Absolutely.
Like you can take
and
some of the
like-
best things in the world with pictures in the world with this.
Yeah. And I think part of that is with, obviously you're going to have your like photographers that are going to want to buy like their expensive cameras, expensive lenses and stuff like that. But like the average everyday person, like nobody buys like a digital camera anymore, or even like a camcorder or anything like that.
Yeah.
That there was a market for like even 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, when
you
we
buy
were
your
kids,
phone, you get that all
I
with
actually
you.
have a camcorder literally sitting like about 10 feet away from me up on
Of course
my,
you do.
how old is it?
It's really old.
Like
It's,
when we were kids, like you would see at
I
like
had a
our
ki- yeah, we
student
had a
events and
camcorder.
all that kind of stuff. Like you'd see like 30 parents with their tripods
Yeah.
and their
Exactly. The
big
digital cameras.
camcorders
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like they'd be like trying to get in front of each
Yeah.
other with like the
Exactly.
zooms and stuff.
Exactly.
Now, you
you
just see a whole bunch of
pulling out their
parents like
phones.
holding their phones like this,
And
they're like,
you also might see that one person holding up an iPad.
I was literally about to say, guess who my mom is? She's the one
Yeah,
holding
she's
up
the iPad guy,
hey,
yeah.
hey, on the new
Yeah.
iPads, the cameras are just as good, and I'm like,
No,
I know it looks
she
bad.
bought this iPad on literally the day that like it was the original iPad.
Oh
it
wow!
was the day
Oh,
that
really?
it came out. Yeah. And like my
So
sister and I
worse.
didn't even know like that it existed, and she comes home and she has like this package, and I'm like, oh, what's in the package? She's like, oh, you'll love to see this. She opens it up and it's an iPad. I'm like, what even is like the concept of a tablet to me was very foreign
Yeah.
when she originally got that.
I remember playing like visiting my cousins who had an iPad, and playing like Angry Birds and stuff
I did
like
the same
that.
thing except with
And-
Plants vs Zombies.
Yeah, Plants vs
Yeah.
Zombies
Yeah,
like on
yeah.
the iPad. That was it. That was so cool. It was so like just opened up my mind. I think we've gone a little too far with how much kids interact with.
See,
iPads
I
and
find
stuff.
that funny that you see that one film, because both of you seem to have grown up like with that technology in
Mm-hmm.
your household, like when it came out.
Yeah.
See, like
Yeah.
I'm in a family of Android people.
Mm.
Oh no.
So I'm the only one with the iPhone, and so like my first phone, I don't know if you guys know this, was a BlackBerry.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah, it was.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it was my dad's old work BlackBerry that work didn't require him to use anymore. So he's like, "Cool, here's your phone." And so I remember playing Brick Breaker on that.
Oh yeah.
Because it had a trackball. I'm like, all right, it works for my needs. I didn't really need it much for anything back when I first got my phone. Then my second phone was some Android, and it was thick, and it was like some huge Android phone. I'm like, okay, it was a smartphone, it had touchscreen, it worked. It was one of those. Although I cracked the screen on it is the one and only thing I've ever cracked a screen on.
All right. To speak in
And then
defense of
I
Androids,
finally got the iPhone 5.
which we need to do. We need to speak in a slight defense of Androids.
Do we?
Winfield's not a big Android
Which
type of guy,
surprises
for those
me.
who
I
don't
Which
love
know.
surprises me
I love
because
Androids. They're really fun.
you can do so much more. Like honestly, because they're open. Like Apple shuts these things down pretty hard and has to conform to what they want. But
Oh, absolutely. My
with
dad configures
Androids,
his phone.
I could literally go
every
build
week.
an app today for it.
Yeah.
It's like that's one thing that I think Android really excels at.
I think part of that though comes from in the United States specifically, like we're all in and from the United States. Apple for smartphone usage is just far above a lot of the other competition. So we're not exposed to as much Androids
Anywhere else in the
or
world, though,
anywhere else in the world. It's all Androids. It's all
Correct.
Samsung. It's
Yep.
that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
we live in a bit of a gap for
Yeah,
those.
it's weird. And
I think
like,
it's just
Although-
because we like things that look, nice and clean
Yeah.
and sharp. Like
I think that's fair.
this phone has a glass back. It's clean. It just everything
looks
looks
nice.
really nice on
everything
it.
works well. It like
It's
the whole
smooth,
Apple, the whole
Yeah.
Apple saying that they don't really use anymore, but it just works, is
Yeah.
like it's an amazing thing to.
It is pretty cool.
Like Apple in general. That's like, and JP is looking to get a new laptop, and I was like, he and I were going back and forth, and I was saying, would you rather want a laptop that probably will die in 2 years and you'll have to go to try to get the manufacturer to have pity on you, and they'll be like, either probably say get a new laptop, which is like usually what happened to me with HP back in the day, or you could get an Apple laptop that looks nice, it works well, it's not the most powerful thing in the world, like you're not going to be able to like game out on it or like do advanced calculations. That's not the point of it. The point of the Apple computer is that it lasts like 5, 6, 7 years, and it just is like this thing that is built well. And I think Americans really like that. It's like simple because you don't have to fuss.
Yeah. Also, going back a little bit, because everybody shared a iPad story or an eye-opening iPad experience.
Yes.
It was
I
truly
think I should
eye-opening.
share my
was.
eye-opening iPad experience, which Winfield was there and a part of. This was back. He knows what I'm about to talk about. Back in junior year of high school, we were in physics class,
Oh, God.
and everybody at school had iPads. They were mandated. And Winfield one day had the normal iPad everybody had, and the next day he shows up with like the iPad Pro, and it's like the size of a laptop. And I'm pretty sure I went, "What the hell is that?"
Yeah.
And it was a massive iPad, and I
Yeah,
had
it was.
no idea it existed.
Mhm.
And then it was so cool because you got multiple tabs open, and he had like a really good stylus for it. I'm like, I need to get myself one of those.
It's
And did you?
No.
He did.
Yeah, I didn't think you did.
No,
The iPad
I got a
Pro-
laptop instead.
The iPad Pro for me, like not everybody needs an iPad Pro. I'm not saying everybody should get an iPad Pro. You should.
I actually
really.
just ordered
It
an
was like-
iPad, but not an iPad Pro because
was like
I'm the type of person that doesn't need it at all.
Yeah.
Winfield, we had like the iPad Airs or something like that,
Yeah.
and it was like too full of my iPads was Winfield's iPad.
This is my
Like,
iPad.
what is going on?
Yeah. So
there it is.
This is actually a newer version. The older one I've donated to family member. But the reason I got the iPad Pro was because actually to sell iPads at Best Buy, it worked carrying one of these around. People would be like, "Oh wow," and you'd let them play on it and like touch it and all that kind of stuff. But I'm doing photography and drawing and like graphics and stuff like that, so I'm constantly carrying something around where it's like, usually like you have to get a Cintiq, which is a $2,000 drawing tablet that stays on your computer or your desk. It stays on your desk and it doesn't move. This I can carry around. It's a couple pounds, and I can throw it in my backpack and do anything that I need to. Yeah. It's more powerful than a lot of the computers out there.
At the time, it ran circles around my iPad and everybody else's iPad. It just ran circles around.
This runs circles around MacBook Airs and some MacBook Pros. Like, with the amount of power behind these things, the ARM processors in these things are insane. Like, the Apple Silicon, and just like what they've actually done with their processors, I'm able to edit 4K video, not like just easily on this thing. And it's a computer that like I carry around if I'm traveling, really. And that's like, I don't bring my laptop or anything like that. It's another way of interacting with everything that I do. And on that note, we're going to be taking a break. We'll see you right after. This episode is brought to you by Richardson's Brewery. Next time you're in a bar, whenever that may be, go up to the bartender and ask if Dick is on tap. If you'd like to support us at the Hideaway Podcast, go down to the link below and buy your own Richardson's Brewery shirt. Richardson's, it's what's on tap. Welcome back to the second half of the Hideaway Podcast. My name is Winfield Jones, and I'm still joined here by Andy and JP. We're going to be doing a shorter second half, just because we got a little carried away about innovation.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. We're going to be talking about just a short thing of what we're doing to spend some time to avoid from going crazy in this pandemic. I'll start off. One thing that I've been doing is actually I've been teaching myself how to do like rewire things. So I actually rewired an outlet. I took out an old outlet and put in a new one. I didn't shock myself. I'm really proud of that.
That's good.
Well, there's an easy way not to do that is if you go to your breaker and turn off the power.
That's what I did. Okay. That's what I did.
Oh, good. Good.
I'm not an idiot. I'm not messing with mains voltage. I was
going to say, like, oh, boy. There's a really easy way to not get shocked.
Yeah, I had this weird, like, plug. I don't even know where it is. But it was... One plug was an actual plug. But the other plug was supposed to be a switch, like a light switch type thing, but it was ripped out. So I had one plug next to my desk, and it was doing everything plugged in. Everything was plugged into that one plug through a power brick. And now I have it split off, so I don't have like everything overloaded on one thing.
What if I told you that my room only has one 3-pronged outlet thing?
Really? One?
I don't know. My house was built in like literally the 1700s or something like that.
1700s, really?
Maybe I think it's like early 18.
My house is about 100
it's
years
insanely
old.
And the
Do you
point
have like
of
a
this
Home
is,
Depot or something?
Yeah, why don't you just get a extender?
I do, but everything's going into the one power brick, which then goes into the one.
That's
the one 3-pronged outlet.
Yeah, it's a fire
I know
hazard.
it is.
It's a solid fire hazard.
I would recommend
viewers, if you don't see JP
in
a couple of weeks, just know that it's probably because his house burned down.
Honestly,
but like get a couple new outlets. They're like $2 a pop. You get the 15 amp ones.
I've seen ones when filled that are cheaper.
Yeah,
than
but
that.
you don't want you.
Yeah,
like,
but I don't want
skip
cheap.
Yeah,
we're going back to the American thing where I don't want cheap. I want something nice and well built.
You can even get the ones that have the USB ports in them, and they're just as easy to rewire. It took me all of probably 10 minutes to learn and do it on my own.
Really?
And it really not. You unscrew a couple wires and then you screw them back into the new one.
Yeah.
Like it's. I would recommend that. It was actually a good thing to learn. Learning something about how to rewire things in your house is pretty nice.
It's a useful skill.
It is.
And it's the same thing that I was doing with like aluminum brazing. Like I don't need to know that, but I want to, and it's like a cool thing to have in my back pocket. Andy, what are you doing?
So one thing I've always been interested in is I am always interested in movies and stuff like that. So if there's a good movie coming out that I know that I want to see, I'll usually go see it in theaters within like the first weekend and stuff like that. Obviously, we're not allowed to leave our house right now, which makes it a little bit harder. But I've actually been doing is going back and watching movies that I've always been like, God, I really want to see that movie, but I've just never seen it. So one of those for me was I finished up Dodgeball the other day. Yeah. It's a movie that like I can quote like all the time. I literally just never seen it, and I finished it the other day. I thought it was hilarious. I also went back and rewatched like The Incredible Hulk from 2008,
Mhm.
which is technically like part of like Marvel Cinematic Universe and stuff like that, but I had never watched it, so I went to go back and watch that one too. So definitely catching up with some movies that I haven't seen. And then besides that, I'm actually going back rewatching some TV shows that I haven't seen yet, or I had seen, but I'm going back to seeing them. I rewatched Chernobyl last week, which I watched when it first came out, and it was incredible. And I remember it being incredible. And I remember like everybody that is currently on this podcast being like, "Holy crap, this is incredible!" And then obviously I hadn't seen it, and it's almost been about a year now. And I went back and rewatched it, and I thought it was even better the second time.
It's
So-
It's like rereading a
It's been
book
about a
that you
year.
haven't read
It
in a
is like
while.
rereading a book, and it
you
is.
pick
it's
up on
just inc-
things you missed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just incredible. And I am one of those people, obviously being a historian, I love watching film and stuff, or recreations of history stuff. And that is by far one of the best produced, best made historical documentaries about something that happened.
All right, thank you, Andy. JP, what are you up to?
I have been working on my car. I own a 2016 Jetta, and it's a blast to drive. It's a manual, and I really like learning how the car works. And what better way to do that than actually getting under the hood and physically underneath the car, which my mom
Nice.
was not a fan of.
I bet.
I got these little they're called Rhino ramps, and
Oh, yeah,
it's
yeah.
obviously getting
Yeah.
like a full on lift is literally insane. My neighbor has one, but again, we're not supposed to be seeing people during this time. So I get these Rhino ramps, and my garage is like uneven, like the concrete is cracked in it, so I have to do it outside in my gravel driveway.
Oof.
And normally, like the bottom, like it has friction against the concrete, and but with gravel, it has no friction. So I go over and I like find the biggest rocks I can in like our rock wall, and I like put them in front of the thing. And my dad comes out, he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm putting the car up on the lift." And he's like, "Why?" And I was like, "Well, because I happened to drop like a really." It was this really small piece, but it's essential to the entire car running. It's an
Yeah.
electrical little component. It plugs into the boost pipe essentially to regulate how much boost goes to the turbo. That's a lot of talk, but basically it makes sure your engine doesn't blow up. So it's
cool.
kind of essential. And it happens to be located at the bottom of the engine, and if you drop this piece, it's on a wire and it'll swing all the way over to where you cannot reach it. So here's me sitting out working on the car trying to figure out how things work. I drop this piece and I lose it, which means that I can't like even start the car up to go anywhere because it's at the bottom of the thing without risking blowing up my engine.
Hey, but the good news is you can't go anywhere anyway, so you got plenty of time to find
Well,
it.
I mean, I live in the country, so I like to go out for drives every now and then because I can do that. But it's not like I have anywhere to actually be. I'll just go drive around some old back roads. But I dropped this piece, which means, oh shoot, what do I do now? I freaked out at first because I was like, I shouldn't have, messed with the car or anything. I just screwed this up. I'm gonna have to go, get it like actually worked on at a shop. And then I like pause and think to myself, wait a minute, I could just go buy these ramps, get underneath the car, and it's gonna take 3 minutes to go get it. And it took 3 minutes to go and get it when the ramps came in. And I literally did all of that for 3 minutes. But in the end, I upgraded the car. It's much faster. It gets better gas mileage because I added eco mode. So
Nice.
if I'm just driving on the highway, there's an app on my phone that I can go into, and I can just set it into eco mode, which means it uses less gas.
That's so cool.
It is really neat. I didn't know that it existed. I was, searching online for things to do, and that popped up.
That's
My
awesome.
car's a manual. Like it doesn't have eco mode. It doesn't have race. Doesn't have sport. Doesn't have anything.
That's so cool.
It's boring.
Nice.
It's regular. But
Wow.
that's what I've been doing. Go
That's pretty
out,
productive.
go find something new to do. That's what I would suggest doing during
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
time.
Yeah, that's a great thing to do. Like I think all of us are doing something productive. Like it's cool to like learn new things, try new stuff, take a little bit of a risk, not by like going outside and talking to people, but like going and trying something that you're a little bit afraid of. or have always been putting off or doing something. And that's it's super cool to see. And I think that's a good place to end off this episode. Thank you so much for visiting with us at the Hideaway. My name is Winfield Jones, and I've been joined here by Andy and JP. If you like this episode, please give us a 5-star rating on your podcasting app of choice. And you can also share with anybody that you so choose. Share with your friends, family, share it online. You can talk with us at our respective socials or at Twitter at Hideaway Podcast. That's Twitter at Hideaway Podcast. You can also leave us a voice message. If you go to anchor.com/Winfield Jones, you'll see the Hideaway Podcast and a voice message button. Click that button and you may end up in next week's episode. Thank you guys again for listening. See you next week. Have a nice day.